So I started watching Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, and I'm wondering to myself, why isn't all anime like this? And that's a stupid question, I know, with a myriad of different answers. But what I'm getting at is that art's purpose is to show us different perspectives and engage our minds. So often after finishing something, we think of it as enjoyable and quietly file it away in our minds. Its only effect on our lives from there being that we can now give an opinion if asked. The art has stopped affecting us shortly after it ends. Sure, there might be ideas in it that get your mind working a bit, and stuff might have emotionally affected you on some level. But did you really feel like you gained anything from the experience? Or are you just running on an artistic hamster wheel, retreading known ground just because it gives you an endorphin rush? Eizouken is an anime that grabs you by the ear and says, hey, you know that art you always wanted to make? Why haven't you made it yet? It shows a realistic progression of how anime gets made, animation being a medium that is one of the most complex of any out there. Eizouken shows how it can be done by a 3-man team in 2 months, but it goes further to show you that even though it can be done, it's not easy and sacrifices have to be made. While creating their first project, the group finds halfway through that they have spent their time inefficiently, and as a result they need to use automated in-between programs and camera tricks in order to finish the animation by the deadline. The 2 artists of the group struggle to deal with this supposed loss in quality, but decide that the completion of the project is more important than the means to get it completed, after a bit of nudging by their producer. Ensuring that the essential elements make it into the work is what really matters. This strategy of sacrificing some of the smaller flourishes in order for the more important scenes to pop ends up working out. And honestly, the end result is better than like 90% of the anime I've seen anyway. Sacrifices need to be made if art is ever going to get done. But such sacrifices ensure that projects are completed rather than wasting away through endless rehashing. There's a phrase that when making something, 80% of the work goes into the last 20% of the quality. When making any art, that 20% of the work that makes up 80% of the quality is what is really important. It's important not to prioritize the supplementary 80% while leaving the essential 20% on the cutting room floor. Eizouken shows you that it's just as important to figure out this 20% as it is to work hard, and it shows how valuable it can be to have someone who can assess what that 20% is. I've been playing the first 2 Fallout games recently, and I found the original game to be severely flawed. Perks are given out sparingly, and a majority of them are nearly useless. There's nowhere to efficiently grind for experience, and the game has things like cut endings, so it's literally impossible to get good endings for 2 of the factions. Though some of these issues were obviously a result of rushed development, and I don't mean to imply that cut and improperly implemented features are a good thing, the people at Interplay made a game that had a lot of conceptual depth despite the deadline. You come to realize that doing quests is actually monumentally helpful in gaining experience. And since you're operating on a time limit and time passes slowly in towns, you feel compelled to do every quest, even ones that seem too hard for your current level. This constant feeling of weakness and that you're punching up in the early game makes every victory that much more satisfying, and the tone of the game is reinforced by the gameplay. You are a single man in a huge wasteland, and it really feels that way. Compare that to Bethesda's handling of the series. Bethesda has released only 2 mainline Fallout games in the 16 years that they've been working on the franchise, the next one not even being announced at this point in time. While many people claim that a modern AAA game requires more work, I refute that claim with the question, are these games even any better? A good video by Strategy Productions titled Morrowind vs. Skyrim, More is Less, talks about Bethesda's current design philosophy, and how even though many modern games have a larger overhead for how much is being created and put into them, a lot of aspects of the game suffer. They're cramming a lot into production in order to fake a sort of depth, and the extra time they afford themselves is largely wasted on the refinement of these systems. It seems like when viewed through a critical lens, most people tend to see Fallout 3 and 4 as very flawed games held together by the weak glue of fun. That's probably one of the most common points to defend the newer Fallout games on, and I'm inclined to agree. Fallout 3 was fun, and I expect that when I get around to playing Fallout 4, it will be fun as well. Bethesda's Fallout games are fun, but is fun really all that valuable? In the More is Less video, Strategy mentions that when people aren't reading, they find themselves in a passive state of consumption. By simply hearing everything we need to know and being guided everywhere by a waypoint marker, we lose any real agency in the games we play. He compares it to how people will mindlessly watch TV, allowing themselves to enjoy an experience but taking very little away from it. While I disagree with the idea that watching TV needs to be a passive experience, or that reading is a necessity for engagement, as he implies, I do agree that this approach to making games require less effort and making them more centered around instant gratification has overwhelmingly become the norm. In practice, this approach results in superficial quest lines and mechanics that dull the game down into a game that is overly forgiving and dull. The games in question have thousands of man-hours poured into making them fun and deep experiences, while more memorable and engaging games have been made with far fewer because the creators had more pointed and tailored experiences in mind. That's effectively what I'm getting at. Spending too much time on a project actually tends to take away from said project. Being forced to release something causes you to focus on what is really important about a product, creating an experience where, ironically, having less time for refinement results in it being more refined. This is not absolute, and many things come out badly after being rushed, but generally speaking, skillfully working under a deadline results in the best product, and putting eggs in too many baskets often results in a shallow product. These games put so much into the 80% of effort that translates to the small flourishes, while forgetting the core 20% of effort that makes up the bulk of the experience. We can see this mistake in movies, television, games, music, but we are reminded in a show like Eizouken that while there is plenty of mediocre art meant to entertain us for a few hours before being forgotten, there's also plenty of art whose creators understand its value, and that you can create similarly great art so long as you can understand the value that your own work has. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked what I had to say, consider subscribing or following me on Twitter so that you can see the inner machinations of my mind firsthand. Speaking of, if you've been keeping up with me for a bit, you know I have a Karakuri Circus video coming up at some point in the future. I've decided that this will be a multi-part series because quite frankly the script has become ridiculously long. In the spirit of this video, I've set the deadline for the first video in the series to be June 27th at the latest, with the subsequent videos following soon after. I've said that if I don't hit this goal, I will break both my legs and post that instead, so look forward to that if this doesn't come out. With that said, thanks again and have a good day.